You're listening to AI Prism from Seoul Economic Daily.
Korea's top ETF executive just went public on social media and told investors to stop buying single-stock leveraged products. He runs those exact products himself. The SK Hynix single-stock leveraged ETF fell 47.5%, while the underlying stock fell 17.9%, 11.7 percentage points worse than the theoretical 2x loss. In the first half of 2026, DC and IRP retirement accounts added 61.7 trillion won, approximately $45 billion, the fastest six-month shift on record. DB-type pension assets recorded their first-ever half-year decline, and a U.S. activist fund is quietly building positions across more than 10 KOSDAQ stocks right now. It's Tuesday, July 21st. Let's look at what this means for retail investors in Korea. Korea's retail investment landscape is being reshaped on two fronts at once: a rare public warning from inside the ETF industry and a structural reallocation in how Korean workers manage their retirement savings. The Philadelphia Semiconductor Index fell 10% last week, its worst weekly drop since April 2025, as questions mount over whether $770 billion, approximately 1,141 trillion won, in global AI capital spending will translate into profits for the companies funding it. Against that backdrop, the shift in Korea's domestic pension market is accelerating faster than most investors realize. Here's what the numbers show. The SK Hynix single-stock leveraged ETF dropped 47.5% between May 27th and July 16th, 11.7 percentage points worse than the theoretical 2x loss of 35.8%, driven by daily rebalancing compounding effects. The inverse 2x product on the same stock recorded a 31.1% loss over the same period, against a theoretical gain of 35.8%, a 66.9 percentage point gap from expected performance. Korea's DC and IRP retirement assets combined surged 61.7 trillion won, approximately $45 billion, in H1 2026, 21.5% more than the full-year growth in 2025. DB-type pension assets fell 4.7 trillion won, approximately $3.4 billion, to 224.2 trillion won, the first-ever half-year decline, with DB's share of total assets dropping from 46.1% to 40.5%. Shinhan Bank overtook Samsung Life as the #1 retirement pension provider for the first time since the system launched in 2005, driven by DC and IRP inflows. US-based Miri Capital raised its stake in KOSDAQ Hynix to 17% and holds positions across more than 10 KOSDAQ-listed companies, backed by a $1.2 billion, approximately 1.78 trillion won, emerging market fund with $200 million in permanent capital and a 7-year annualized return in the low to mid 20% range. So what does this mean for retail investors in Korea? Earlier, we said Korea's top ETF executive told investors to stop buying single-stock leveraged products, and he runs those exact products himself. Here's what that actually means for you. The math on these instruments punishes volatility even when you're directional long right, and a public warning from an industry insider is a signal you shouldn't discount just because the product is still on the shelf. The pension data and Miri Capital's accumulation pattern tell a parallel story. The structural shift in Korea is toward long-duration, self-directed equity exposure, and foreign activists are positioning ahead of governance-driven M&A pressure in the KOSDAQ market. 3 things to watch. Alphabet and Tesla report earnings on July 22nd, the first major test of whether $770 billion in AI capex is delivering returns, and the result will move global tech sentiment directly relevant to any Korea-listed semiconductor exposure you hold. Monitor Miri Capital's next 5% plus disclosure filings. Past targets Gabia and STIQ both saw delisting bids or management transitions follow the accumulation phase. and track the DC and IRP share of total retirement assets through year-end. If DB falls below 40%, it signals the structural shift is now irreversible, with direct implications for which financial institutions capture the next wave of retirement money. That's today's AI Prism, Retail Investors. This episode was produced with AI assistance based on Seoul Economic Daily reporting and reviewed by a human editor. AI Prism is a WAN IFRA award-winning series. We'll be back tomorrow.
You've been listening to AI Prism from Seoul Economic Daily.